Hello everyone, my name's Andy Kerr. I'm Head of Marketing for Europe for Redstor. I'll be presenting the first half of today's webinar. I'll be joined by Donnie Murray, who's our Director of Software Development. Donnie will join us a little bit later on to talk you through how the software was developed and what we had in mind when we developed it, the way it was developed. And he'll give you a bit of a walkthrough of how to back up and recover using Redstor's Office 365 protection. So many of you will know that we've had OneDrive and SharePoint protection out for a little while Mail is quite recent. We do already have people using Mail. We ourselves are using it internally, in fact. I should say as well, we're using a new technology to conduct today's webinar, so apologies for any glitches. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, pop them in the question pane and we'll address as many of them as we can towards the end. We do also have a poll at the end of the, we'll start it as we start the Q&A session. Please do respond. We really value your feedback. We need your feedback to ensure that we develop the software in the way that you'd like to see it develop. There's only 5 questions, should take at most 20 seconds to complete. Also, I'm conscious that we have a combination of both partners and end users on today's webinar. So apologies if there's anything that's not completely relevant to you. That is the reason for it. So before we get started on Office 365, I just wanted to mention some recent news that we're really proud of as an organization. I'm sure many of you are familiar with IDC. IDC is a leading provider of market insight and advisory services for the tech markets. And each year, IDC publishes a market glance report for data protection as a service. So 2 years ago, Redstor was largely unknown to analysts. Many of you will remember the term hidden gem. Thankfully, that is less and less the case. The 2019 Data Protection as a Service report was updated in August of this year, and we're pleased to say Redstor now features in 5 of the 8 categories. So we're in backup, archiving, DR, workload migration, and backup and recovery tools. We're proud of that because it's really strong, independent validation of Redstor's message of 3-in-1 protection backed by search and insight. So that really does show the value that you get when you use Redstor as a customer, given whilst you may purchase a service for backup, you immediately get archive and disaster recovery thrown in at no extra cost. Moving on to Office 365 then. Why Office 365? Why is that where we started? Well, SaaS, as we know, is becoming increasingly prevalent, and specifically when you look at email and collaborative applications, over 60% of organizations are already using a SaaS tool. That figure is from IDC's research, and importantly, a further 30% plan to switch to SaaS within 24 months. So in 2 years' time, almost everyone will be using a SaaS mail and collaborative application. When you look at the growth of Office 365, it's already surpassed 180 million users. Going back to November 2015, that number was 60 million, so it's risen 3-fold since then. And it's also worth remembering that data is largely moving to SaaS as well. And in fact, the data sphere as a whole is continuing to explode, as we all know. So EMEA data, which is increasingly made up of SaaS, is expected to grow 5 times to 2025. While Office 365 is great, it does create, or in some cases exacerbate, some challenges that we're seeing within the marketplace. What are the most common challenges? Retaining full control over your data. Because you're using more and more SaaS services, you're more reliant on Microsoft and other providers, therefore you can be less in control. Not only is that a challenge, but because Office 365 is so prevalent, it's a really common target for malware. We've seen a lot of news recently, things like account takeover attacks, Office 365 admin phishing scams, and in fact the number of malicious emails sent from hijacked Office 365 accounts, there were 1.5 million in March of this year alone, and that number continues to increase. As well as that, with more fragmentation, more platforms, comes more admin overhead. So another platform, several new apps to manage, increasing data sprawl, that's time consuming and challenging. Because Office 365 is a cloud platform and Microsoft is a very large organization, avoiding cloud lock-in and vendor lock-in can also be a challenge. And it's important to ensure that you can get your data out of Office 365 and into whatever other platform you'd like to move it to. That's obviously a lot easier if you already have a copy of your data outside of Office 365. So why should you choose Redstor to protect your Office 365 data? Well, when we decided to focus on Office 365, we didn't set out to build yet another Me Too Office 365 data protection service. We looked at the market and we spoke to our customers, and we developed technology to enable you to apply the same policies to your Office 365 data as you do to the rest of your organization's data. So as the wording on the slide says, protecting Office 365, OneDrive, SharePoint, and Exchange in Redstor's cloud allows you to retain full control over your data, mitigating the risk of storing it solely with Microsoft, helping avoid cloud and vendor lock-in. And critically, Redstor's security-first approach doesn't require giving IT access to user account data, and our commitment to ensuring data sovereignty helps comply with legislation such as GDPR. You'll notice throughout this slide deck, which we will share afterwards, there are a number of links to assets. So the one linked here is our recently launched Office 365 protection page. There are a number of resources on there. We'll cover those off a little bit later on. So a little bit more detail about Redstor's approach for Office 365 and what we've focused on ensuring that you can achieve using our technology. The first is centralizing control. So being able to view and manage Office 365 data through the same interface as your other organization's data. The net result of that is increasing standardization and reducing management overhead. So on the topic of standardization, ensuring effective data protection, treating Office 365 data the same way as all of your other data so that you can ensure policies are consistent. You can ensure that you're compliant with things like GDPR, and you can use Redstor's platforms to ensure the sovereignty of your backup, DR, and archive data. And lastly, as I mentioned previously, avoiding lock-in, avoiding the risk of having all of your eggs in one basket, and making sure that you're not beholden to Microsoft. So a little bit more detail on some of those areas. Enhancing data security. A real strength of Redstor's offering is that it honors the role-based permissions present in Office 365. Effectively, what that means is if the CEO of your organization or an organization that you support requires some of their data to be restored, IT can achieve that without actually having access to the CEO's mail or OneDrive files. There's also no impact on bandwidth because Redstor's offering is a true cloud-to-cloud data protection technology. Backups and recoveries are between Microsoft and Redstor data centers, so there's no impact on your local bandwidth. Because it's truly cloud-to-cloud, there's no local appliance or local storage needed to perform a backup or recovery either. And as with all Redstor services, our goal is to make your lives easier so you can get set up in minutes. And once you are set up, it's automated. You can also recover in seconds as well. So hopefully most of you are familiar with instant data. With instant data, you can get back up and running in an hour without waiting hours for all your data to recover, the same as with any other Redstor service. And it's fully auditable as well, because being able to evidence compliance is often just as important as being compliant itself. So I mentioned we've had elements of our Office 365 protection out for a while. Two of our, I would say, best case studies. One is Winchester College. And for those of you that are familiar or that aren't familiar with Winchester College, they're a very impressive school, one of the longest running schools around. And they've been using Redstor's Office 365 protection for quite some time. And we've got a text and video case study that is linked in this deck, so you can have a read a little bit later or a watch. So I mentioned we've got a lot of assets to inform you about the topic and about Redstor's specific product. IDC, we've been working quite a lot with them in the last year, and they've put together what they call an info brief. It's sort of a combination of a white paper and an infographic on why it's risky and inefficient to exclude Office 365 from a unified data management strategy. That document will be linked in this slide deck when we share it. Redstor has similarly put together an internal doc covering the 7 reasons why you need a separate backup strategy for Office 365. You can have a read of that at your leisure, but at a high level, those reasons are avoiding dependency, setting your own retention policies, addressing compliance issues, recovering everything in the event of deletion, preventing delays due to data loss, protecting against ransomware attacks, and ensuring separate roles as a security standard. We've also got a light board video done by Farad, for those of you who know Farad, on why you should have a separate strategy in place to protect your Office 365 data. So on to Redstor's product. We've got a number of videos for you to have a look at. The first is how to set up each of the 3 different aspects of our Office 365 protection, and the second is all the different ways in which you can recover using Office 365. We also have a fairly high-level marketing brochure on why you should choose Redstor to protect your Office 365 data, as well as a much more technical document outlining how the service works. And I mentioned case studies. Here are the 2 most recent ones that we put together. I'm sure some of you are familiar with PDSA and Winchester College I talked through previously. So on to pricing, and I know we've discussed this with many of you already. We've got a really good strategy here. It's the same simple pricing as before. It's a real way of differentiating from the competition. It's a single line item regardless of wherever your data resides. And the reason it's a good way of differentiating is because a lot of our competitors price on a per user cost. And whilst that may be easy, there's an element of risk that the vendor takes on because you have to allow for users with a lot of data. The net result of that is that we're finding that actually when we come against competitors, we usually work out a lot cheaper. So as an example, we recently encountered a prospect with around 2,500 users. Our per gigabyte quotes worked out 1/10 of the price against several competitors. So when I say cheaper, I mean often significantly cheaper. Some other good news, we have created, our technical team has created a script to simplify the process of working out how much data you have within Office 365. So that hopefully it's fairly straightforward to scope and quote on Office 365 protection. I should also say that for everyone that's registered for today's webinar and has joined today's webinar, Office 365 is available for everyone to try today. You've got the entirety of September to test it out free of charge. And if you like it, then you can start paying in October. Obviously, if you've got any questions about how to set it up or any concerns or queries, contact your account manager, contact our support team. They're available to help as always. In addition, price per gig as per your existing agreement. So hopefully there are no surprises there. Also worth mentioning, there are no hidden costs as with every other Redstor service. There are no bandwidth costs, no recovery fees. You can recover as many times as you like, as often as you like. There's only one cost, and it's price per gig, as with everything else. So really simple and straightforward, and a real opportunity to differentiate from the other providers out there. And with that, I'll hand over to Donnie. At this point, Donnie's going to give you a bit of an overview of the architecture of the software, and then a walkthrough of how to recover and get set up.
There we go, finally unmuted. So welcome everybody, and greetings from the Redstor development office down in Cape Town, South Africa. And before we jump into the live demo, I quickly just want to take you through the architecture of the Office 365 backups. So if you take a look at the slide in front of you, so we start off, the data that we are protecting, of course, is in Office 365. So on the left-hand side, you will see the Office 365 cloud, where your OneDrive, SharePoint, and your mail data resides. Then moving on to the right, we have what we call the Redstor cloud-to-cloud service. And this is really the engine that does all the processing. Effectively, it acts as a backup agent, similar to ESE, which extracts the data from Office 365, then processes it locally, and then sends it off to the storage platform, which is the module on the right-hand side. So data is stored in exactly the same format as any other backup data, which means that you can see it in the console, you will see accounts in the console, you will see data usage, and more importantly, you will be able to use instant data to be able to access those files, and then you can do individual file recoveries on the machine of your choice by using instant data. And I will show all of that functionality to you. So let's jump right into the demo. So as soon as I've got my screen share up, I'm going to start with basically taking you step by step through how you get set up and how you would use the software. And I'm starting with a blank browser. And the reason for that is I want to show you where to get the information, how to get going. So the simplest place to get that is on the Redstor support portal. For that, you can go to redstor.support.com, and you simply go to the search bar and you type in cloud to cloud. The first article that comes up, even if you just type in cloud, is going to be this one here, cloud to cloud. So I'm going to open that up, and here you will see basically all the information that you need. It's split up in a sort of an introduction, and then it goes into the three different areas or three different things that we back up, which is OneDrive, Mail, and SharePoint. So we're gonna start with Mail, but before we do that, here at the top you will see the three different links for the cloud-to-cloud services that you can access. So we have three running for the three major platforms that we have in Redstor. The top one is for Redstor UK. Then there's one backing for people backing up or wanting to back up to Redstor South Africa, and then into Internet Solutions in South Africa as well. So in order to get going, the first thing that you need is, number one, is this article, because you will get the links to access the necessary data. Then the second thing that you need is you are going to need on the storage platform a collection that is set up with admin credentials. So you're going to need admin credentials to a collection on the storage platform, and that the Redstor staff will help you to do that. We are working on an automatic sign-up, which will come later, but for now you need to get those details from your support agent. And then the third thing that you will need is Office 365 admin credentials. And the reason for that is you need to enable the cloud-to-cloud agent to extract the data from Office 365, and that's where the credentials come in. And of course, you need the storage platform credentials so that you can send that data off to Office 365 to the storage platform. Right, so I'm going to click on the first link here, which is the UK platform where my demo is set up. So you're going to get a page that looks like this, and here you will enter your storage platform credentials that you got from Redstor. So in my case, this is Dani demo, and I'm going to continue once I've supplied my password. Now, you see that this is a simple username and password login. We do, however, support two-factor authentication if you have that set up. And again, our support staff can help you to set that up. Right, so the first thing that you'll see is I've got some accounts already set up. Just ignore that for the time being. I'm going to start off as if I don't have anything, and I'm going to set up a new backup set. So at the moment, we only support Office 365, and I'm going to just call this the demo. And so the first choice that you have to make is what in Office 365 is it that you want to back up. So like I said, you've got the option to back up OneDrive, SharePoint, and email. So I'm going to start with email, and I'm going to click the next button. So at this point, I'm going to need to supply my Office 365 credentials so that I can get access to the data in Office 365. In this case, I'm using a demo account of a colleague of mine, so I'm going to log in with his details. I need to accept all these terms, and then I should go into the interface. Right, so you'll see here that I've now got cloud email selected, and right now I don't have any accounts selected for backup. So what I can do is I can click here on the select accounts, and this will show me all the different accounts that have mail boxes in my organization. Usually these are divided into departments. So you'll see here there's a development department. These are ones without any specific department specified. There's a QA department and so forth. So I can go and select individual accounts like that, or I can select an entire department, in which case it will then back up all the accounts in that department, and whenever new accounts are added, they will automatically be included for backups as well. Right, so let's say I've selected those accounts. Then I can set a backup schedule. By default, there will be one set automatically, just so that to ensure that if you forget to set it, there's always going to be daily backups. So you can either choose the simple daily backups where you specify the time, or you can do an advanced one where you specify which days of the weeks you would like backups to run. And that's only if you don't want daily backups. Right, so once you've got the mail set up, we are basically ready to start the backup. Now, one major difference from ESE that I would like to highlight at this point is the fact that the cloud-to-cloud backups is geared for the administrator and not so much the guy with the server or the laptop or the PC. So of course, you know that ESE, for every PC or server that you want to back up, you have an account. In this case, you need one account, one administrative account, which is your which will give access to all the mailboxes, and the administrator will determine which mailboxes are backup, and he will also be the one that does the restores. And I will show you how that works. Right, so I'm not going to start a backup now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip over to one where I've already done some backups in a different backup set, and I'm going to show you how to do a restore. So I have already backed up some here. So let's say my colleague comes to me and he says, listen, I've lost some data. I need to get a particular mail back. So I'm going to click on the recover data option and go to the account that I want to restore. Click on the next button, and here it now asks me what range of mails do I want to restore. So I have the option to restore everything which is less than 7 days old, or anything which is less than a month old, or I can restore the entire mailbox. Now, at this point, the mail recovery can only restore data back to the original mailbox. You cannot access mails from the interface, and you cannot restore mails to a different mailbox. So, and you also we don't restore individual mails at this point, but you do have the option to do, like a 7 days. So I'm going to say I want to recover the mails from the last 7 days, because the one that I've lost is indeed in these 7 days. So just to show you the mailbox that I've backed up, is this one over here. So this is the mailbox that I've backed up, and let's say I've deleted, these first few mails. They're gone, and those are the ones that I need to get back, right? So I'm going to start the restore, and so there we go. Start the recovery process. I can select which backup I want to restore from. I'm simply going to choose the last one, and I'm going to start the recovery process. So here you'll see that will run in the background. That'll take a few minutes, so I'll just leave that running there, and let's move on to onto OneDrive, which is the next one that I would like to show. So the setup for OneDrive is exactly the same as you would do mails. You would create the backup set. You would select, instead of mail, you would select OneDrive, and then you would select the accounts that you would like to be backed up. So again, I've selected some accounts. They've already been backed up, and now I want to do a recovery. So the OneDrive recovery is different than mail in the sense that you've got two options. So the first option is similar to mail, where you can recover back to the cloud. And that option will simply write all of the data back into the OneDrive account for the particular person that we're choosing. However, the one that I want to demo now is where we use instant data to recover the data. Now, this is very useful because anybody with the instant data link can access the data, and you can use it, and you use the standard instant data interface, where you can simply browse the files that you want to get back. So if I click on the instant data link here, then it asks me, okay, so which files, which is the user that I want to restore. In this case, it's just going to be Niels. I'm going to click on next, and it asks me how long the instant data link should be valid for. In this case, I'm going to choose 1 hour, and then I'm going to click on the next button again. So what happens now is the administrator, which is me, I don't get a mail or I don't get the instant data link. The instant data link goes back to the original user, and that's, from a security point of view, is good, because I should not have access to the data as the administrator. Only the end user should have access to it. So how does this work? Well, he gets a mail that says, we see you'd like to restore some data. In order to do that, please click on this link. So I'm going to click on this link, which is a standard instant data link. I'm going to download that instant data, and I'm going to launch temporary access. Now remember, this is a OneDrive, these are OneDrive files, and in fact, the OneDrive folder is this one here. So these are the files that I've backed up already. And you can see there are 3 folders in here, and there's a demo folder here with a whole bunch of files, and this is the one that I'm interested in. Right, so we've downloaded the instant data agent. It asked me what I want to mount, so I'm going to mount just the last backup. And for those of you not familiar with instant data gives you the ability to have streaming access to your data, you can simply go to the files that have been backed up, and you can access them on the fly. So you'll see here that on my PC, there's a new drive has now been mounted. I'm going to go into that and go into the date OneDrive. There you see the 3 folders, and here's the demo folder. So I can simply go to any one of these files, and I should be able to access them as if they're live on my machine. Of course, it's now being streamed down from the storage platform, and I should be able to open that on my machine as if it is local, just a little bit slower. Right, so there's the file, and I can access that on the fly. Right, so the great thing about this is I can do individual file restores. I can just copy the files off that I want, and then I can either push that back into OneDrive, or I can just use them for whatever purpose I need to use them. Right, so that's OneDrive. You do have the option to restore back into the OneDrive account as well. So at this point, I see that our mail recovery has now finished. So remember, we've lost some emails. We went to the administrator. Niels came to me, the administrator, and he said, let's restore them. So I finished that restore. And now, if Niels goes to his emails, and we do a quick refresh here, then we should see that there is now a new folder that popped up here at the bottom. It's called Redstor Restores, and whatever we selected for restore has now been pushed into this special folder, which is a normal mail folder with all the mails that we wanted to restore. And there you see, there are the 3 mails that happen to fall inside the 7 days, and I can simply take any of these and drag it back into the inbox, and there you go. There's your restore. Right, so that covers OneDrive and email. So for the last demo, I'm going to move over to SharePoint. So SharePoint is a little bit different in the sense that where OneDrive and Mail, you need to select the accounts that you want to back up. For SharePoint, we don't have accounts, but we have sites. So in SharePoint, when you browse what you would like to back up, we show all the sites that are available in your Office 365 tenant. So in this case, we've got a whole list of sites here. Some of them I've already backed up. The one that I'm interested in here is this one here called Dani Demo Site. And so imagine I've lost some data in that site. Again, the recovery process, I can go recover back to the cloud, but I can also do an instant data recovery. So it works exactly the same as the OneDrive recovery, or not exactly the same, almost the same. So let me just quickly show this to you. So here's, I've got my site that I want to restore. In this case, I'm the administrator of the site, so I already have access to all the data. So instead of sending a mail, it will now simply show the instant data link inside of the web interface. As soon as I click on that, it'll then download the instant data agent and give me the option to restore those files. Exactly the same as I did with OneDrive. Right, so in summary, the things that you need to be able to use this functionality is, number one, you're going to need Office 365 admin credentials. You're going to need an admin account for a collection on one of the Redstor storage platforms. And thirdly, you're going to need the link where to go, and you will be able to find that when you go to the support portal. Right, and that is it. Just to highlight again the article where you can find all this information. For instance, on OneDrive, it shows you exactly how to set it up. It even starts with a video that takes you through the whole process, and then snapshots of all the different things that you need to click on and so forth. And the same goes for Mail and for SharePoint. So really, you've got all the information you need. Also, in terms of things that are still on the roadmap, they are listed underneath each one of these items. So you can see, for instance, for Mail, we're not backing up calendar and contacts yet, which is on the roadmap, and we are going to work on that in the future. Right, so at this point, I'm going to open up for questions, but before we do that, oops, let's just get to the right slide. There we go. Sorry about that. So before we do that, I would like you to take part in a poll that we've created. So I'm going to share that now. Looks like I need to stop my screen share. Oh, there we go. There comes the poll. So if you can take a few seconds, it'll take you maybe 30 or 40 seconds just to quickly go through that and just select the relevant answer. There are only 5 questions, and there's multiple choice, only one most of them only one answer per question. So if you can just take a minute and just quickly go through that, and then we will start with the questions. I think Andy is going to join me now, and we'll get going. So
it's probably worth just mentioning as well for the few Redstor people on today's webinar, please do not vote. You will skew the results. Thanks.
There goes my vote. Right. So I'm going to start with some of the questions. We've already received a whole host of questions which came in throughout the webinar. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. We may not be able to get to all the questions, and I'll pick a few of them. But in the mail that we're going to send you afterwards, we will definitely go and answer all of them and provide you with those answers. So the first one is, if you already use Redstor, what is the advantage of choosing Redstor's Office 365 protection? Andy, would you mind getting that one?
Sure. So if you already use Redstor, then if you add your data to Redstor using Redstor's Office 365 protection, all of your data is in one place. You've got a single place to manage it. You can ensure all of your policies are consistent, and with only one technology managing your entire data set, the overhead in terms of admin should be significantly less than if you're using multiple technologies. Thank you.
There's another question in terms of the data usage, impact on bandwidth, and how the data gets routed. So basically, as you've seen on the architecture diagram, the data comes from Office 365 and then gets processed by the cloud service, and that cloud service runs in Azure. So basically from Azure to Azure, and then is pushed off into the Redstor storage platform. So the data does not go through your Office or through any hardware that you need. So you simply need your Office 365 subscription, and that will do the trick. Another question, how long does it take to set up? That one we've pretty much covered. You've seen how quick it is to set up, and you just need those three things, and that should be able to get you going. There's a question here for Dropbox, if we plan to support Dropbox, and maybe there are some other features. Andy, do you want to take that one?
Sure. We are continually assessing which technologies and platforms we should support. Dropbox, I don't believe is currently on our list, but what we will be doing at the end of this webinar is sending out a follow-up mail, including the recording, and alongside the recording, we're going to ask people exactly what they'd like us to develop next, whether that's to further Office 365 technology support, or maybe it's the G Suite or Dropbox. If I'm honest, that's not one that I believe has been tabled before, but it has now. So we'll be sure to include that in our list when we send it out.
Okay, the next question is about utilization in terms of how much data is being used and so forth. So there are a couple of ways that you can see that. The simplest one is in the storage platform console. So here I've just opened up the console that I've used for the demo. So you'll see that in my collection, the Office 365 cloud service has created a collection called O365, and under that will each of my backup sets will sit under that. I can then just go into each one and see how much data is being utilized by them. So that's one way of seeing it. In terms of the billing, we haven't sorted that out 100% yet. We'll see exactly how we do that, how we will tie into the billing system, and so you should be able to get a bill at the end of the month in terms of how much you need to pay. Let's move on to another question. What are the recovery options that we already covered? In most cases, you can recover straight back into the cloud. In all cases, in fact, you can recover to the cloud, or you can simply use instant data. Do note that instant data is only available for file-based backups, so not for email at this point in time. Another question, if multi-factor authentication is available, absolutely it is. For that, you either need to have Google authentication set up, or you need Microsoft authentication, which is what we use here at Redstor. So if you have that set up, you can give those details to the support staff, and then they will set you up. There's a question here in terms of is it possible to recover only one particular email? So the question right now, you cannot, or the answer is right now you cannot. However, the developers here are working on that feature as we speak. So that's one of the next ones that are going to come out, where you will be able to recover individual mail items. There's a question about OneNote, whether we're backing that up. Right now, we're not backing up OneNote just yet. That's also still on the roadmap. There's a question, does the mail restore use the received date for an email, or the last modified dates for the email? So Niels, do you want to get that? So I'd like to introduce one of the developers for Office 365. This is Niels. Technical question, so can you answer that one?
For the restore, currently we're using the last modified date to restore, but we've had some requests that isn't correct. So it would be more correct to, if for instance, the sent items, you'd want the sent date. If it's a received item, received date. So that is in our backlog to change it to that.
Thanks, Niels. Next question, do we support the backup of Teams? So again, at the moment, we do not. That's on the roadmap. And again, would be something that we would love to hear from you guys in terms of which you would like to see first, and we will send that mail out to you. What is the number of files supported for cloud-to-cloud restore? So I don't think there's an actual number. What I can say is that we've made significant improvements with regards to the restore speed, where we brought down the restore speed by a factor of about 15. So so the restores are working well, and we've been able to restore as much data as we've been able to back up. So I'm not quite sure what those numbers are. There's a question about any servers in Australia or Australasia. Andy, do you want to take that one?
So, sorry, Donnie, the line crackled just in the middle of that question. Would you mind repeating it, please?
Yeah, no problem. So the question was about any Australasian servers or storage platforms.
I believe we do, actually, although you're probably more in the know there than I am. We do have a Redstor member of staff who's based in New Zealand. He's recently moved there. We do have a number of partners based there as well. So if you're based in Australasia, we can certainly support you.
Right, there's a question, maybe one or two more questions. There's one about shared mailboxes and whether we back up shared mailboxes. Niels, would you mind taking that one?
Yes, yeah, shared mailboxes.
Short and sweet. A question about the ETA for contacts, calendars, and so forth. So no, I don't have an answer for that, and the simple reason is that we haven't started the planning of that and so forth. So again, I can just say it is on the roadmap. And the question I would ask you guys is, would you like to see that before you would like to see, for instance, Gmail, or before you'd like to see Teams or anything else that you need to back up, or that you would like to see backed up? So please give us that information. Maybe the last question, what is the pricing model? Andy, do you mind taking that one?
Yeah, I can cover that one. So as we said earlier, it's a single line item cost per gig. It would be the same as your existing price per gig. So whilst there are some additional cost components for Redstor in protecting Office 365 data, we want to make our offering as competitive as possible. So we're offering it to you at exactly the same cost as any other data, which hopefully means it's, for the partners out there, incredibly easy to price up for your customers as well. And just to reiterate, there are no bandwidth charges, and as with every other Redstor service, you can recover as many times as you like. There's no cost associated with that either. One single cost, a cost per gig.
Great. So I'm going to stop the questions at this point. We have no less than 28 questions that came through online. I only managed to get to a handful of that, but we promise we will answer each one of them in the feedback mails that we will send you afterwards, which will also contain the recording and, of course, any other questions that we would like to ask you. From my side, thank you so much for joining. It's been great to be able to speak to so many of you guys. And please keep an eye out for more mails about this coming from Redstor. But from the dev office here in Cape Town, goodbye, and over to my colleague in the UK.
Thanks, Tony. Before I sign off, I'd just like to say, if you haven't answered the questions in the poll, please do. I see a number of you have requested a proof of concept be set up. Your account managers will be in touch in relation to that, I would imagine rather soon. And if any of you joined the webinar once we'd already started, we did start bang on time, so apologies for that. We will share a recording of the full webinar along with some additional questions about the direction in which you'd like the technology to be developed. So from me, I'd just like to echo what Dani said. Thanks very much for joining us today. It was great to have so many of you on one webinar. I think it's certainly a record for Redstor. And watch out for more news from us, because we are launching Insight next month. In fact, many of you will note an invite to a go-kart day in the UK, where we'll be launching Insight. So yeah, from me, thanks again, and hopefully we'll speak to you all again soon.